Welcome to everyone to our Education Research Center Advisory Board meeting, our quarterly meeting. I'm Julie Eklund. I chair the board at the behest of the Commissioner of Higher Education, and it's always a pleasure to be here with all of you. We will be recording the meeting as we always do. Sometimes there's a level of complexity in the proceedings, so it does help us. We just use those recordings to go back and check any information that we might need to in terms of decisions made and information provided.
Is now joining.
Continuing to have folks join us.
Is now
again.
exiting.
Welcome to everyone who is here with us today. Well, Linda, I think if you could share the PowerPoint, that would be wonderful. Linda Hargrove, who ably assists me in terms of preparing for these meetings, is going to share the PowerPoint with our agenda on it for today. There it is. Thank you. And I think I'm going to move it up to my larger screen, which makes it a little easier for me to see it. Well, I have why don't we go to the next slide? This is the contact information for the video conference. If anyone's having any challenges, again, we are recording the meeting, and it is an open meeting. And then let's move to the next slide. So I actually have several remarks that I want to make today, and one that is certainly very important for me to share is the fact that this is going to be my last ERC Advisory Board meeting as chair. As many of you know, I have announced my retirement for the end of April, so I will not be with you all for the June meeting. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the plans moving forward for the ERC Advisory Board. Dr. Melissa Humphreys is with us on the call, and maybe she can jump in. I don't know if you're able to see her. Dr. Humphreys has worked in the Division of Strategic Planning, the division where I'm the Assistant Commissioner for, I want to say 7 or 8 years now, Melissa. And
just her 5 or 6.
5 or 6. Okay, it feels like longer. She's just been a wonderful addition to our division, and she is the director of an area that works in. It covers research for the division and research projects for the agency, and also covers P16 areas of data analytics. So we're really happy to have her on the call with us today, and she is actually going to be serving as interim chair for the ERC Advisory Board while we're in this transition phase. And Melissa has her undergraduate degree from Rice University. I know there's probably some folks on the call with us today who are at Rice, and her doctorate is in sociology from UT Austin. So Melissa, we so appreciate you taking on the role of chair as we're in this transition period. I know you'll do a fantastic job, and Melissa actually has been shadowing us a little bit, working with Linda Hargrove and with me as we've been reviewing proposals and talking through the agenda for the meeting today. So again, thank you for joining us. And I do want to say to everyone, it's really been an honor to chair this advisory board for the last 6 years. It's been an honor and a true pleasure. It's one of the things I like best about my job. Always fascinating research projects, and really exciting to see the work that's being done on behalf of the students of the state of Texas. All the great projects with the of course wealth of data that we have in this state. So I hope all of you will continue your good work moving forward, and I've enjoyed working with all of you. Okay, so that said, I also want to mention that Linda Hargrove is going to be continuing to support the committee. So she's done a great job of making sure our meetings are in order and all of the proposals are ready for our meetings. So Linda, we so appreciate the work that you've done the last couple of years with the group, and thank you for your continued efforts on behalf of the advisory board and the ERCs. And finally, we're going to be sending out a survey. Well, actually, I have 2 more things. One is that we got a grant from the Department of Education, and it's actually a sub-grant that went to TEA. The grant went to TEA. It's for the SLDS, State Longitudinal Data System. development. TEA got a grant to continue the work they're doing there, and the coordinating board got a sub-grant to try to improve efforts for documentation and support for the ERCs. And so we're going to be sending researchers with current projects a survey to just get some feedback from all of you about what we could do better in terms of data documentation, in terms of thinking about building a researcher community base, and also having searchable a means to more easily search past ERC projects. So searchable documentation and some other opportunities there to make the work that all of you do easier for you. So we're very excited to get that grant from the Department of Ed, and we wanted stakeholder feedback as a part of that. A couple of years ago, we had a Making the Most of the ERCs meeting where we brought stakeholders in and collected ideas, and really we built this grant off of the ideas that we got from all of you in terms of how could we make the ERCs better, how could we improve the researcher experience, et cetera. So if you get the survey, it shouldn't take too long. We'd really, 10 to 20 minutes, we'd really appreciate it if you take some time to fill that out. And I believe we're going to try to get that out by next week. And then finally, I wanted to let everyone know, if you haven't heard already, we finally got 2017 and 2018 National Student Clearinghouse data loaded into the ERCs. I know you've all been anxiously awaiting for that data about out-of-state enrollment, and we expect the 19 and 20 to be coming relatively soon. TEA is working on completing some work there, and eventually we'll get that, and we'll get the records anonymized and transferred over to the ERC. So we are making progress, and I'm pleased to announce that because I know I've been telling you about the arrangements to get that data for a while now. So it should be there, at least the first installment. All right. Well, that was a lot of updates. So I think, unless Linda, I'm missing something. It feels like we can probably move forward with our agenda. Oh, I did want to say one last final thing, that we do have a slight change to the agenda, and because it's at the end, I wanted to mention it now. In terms of our consideration for approval of proposed guidelines for advisory board policies for commissioner-directed projects, we are not going to be considering guidelines. We have not shared guidelines. We did have a subcommittee that met, and as a result of that work and some work internally at the coordinating board and working with our legal staff, we are going to be presenting to the advisory board just the plans moving forward for handling commissioner-directed projects. And it's a slight shift in what we were initially intending because of all the work that the subcommittee did and working with legal and other staff on the best approach for that. So just wanted folks to know that we will be discussing the item, but we will not be considering guidelines at this time. Okay, so again, thank you for joining us. And Linda, I'm going to ask you to move on to the next agenda item.
Julie,
yes.
This is Lori. If it's appropriate, could I share a couple of things with the group?
Yes, please do. And please introduce yourself, Lori.
Will do. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining for this quarterly important undertaking on behalf of the Education Research Centers. My name is Lori Fye. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Data Analytics and Innovation, and Julie and her stellar team and Melissa are part of my team. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity, since this is Julie's last day, to thank her in front of this group of distinguished colleagues and stakeholders. Thank her for her leadership and her stewardship of this group and of this extraordinary resource. Many of you who have been in the education space in Texas for a while will know that Commissioner Keller was part of the original genesis of the Education Research Center. So it has been an important asset from its inception in his mind, and it's obviously, now that he's Commissioner of Higher Ed, an even more important asset. And Julie has done an outstanding job of working with all of the stakeholders involved and really shepherding this group and being a good steward of this extraordinary asset. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank her publicly and tell her I this is the first of many that I'm going to have to do this in, but we're really going to miss her. So thank you, Julie. And now you can get back to business.
Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate it. Okay, well, we will move on then to our agenda item number 2, and this is consideration of approval of additional data requests. So our first project which is Data 1, is UT Austin 130, School Performance and Student Enrollment Changes Among Texas Schools Targeted for Strategic Actions. And just for those of you who are new to the meeting, we will, when we look at data extension requests and additional data requests, the advisory board discusses, and we don't ask for a researcher summary, but we appreciate the researchers who are with us in case someone on the advisory board has any questions or needs additional information from the researchers. When we move into our new proposals, we will ask each researcher to give us a brief overview of their project before we begin. So that said, are there any questions or comments on behalf of the advisory board? And I just realized, and it's probably all in my excitement of announcing my retirement, I just realized we didn't take a final attendance for advisory board members. I was checking in and made sure we had a quorum, but let me just briefly do that, and then we will see if there's comments or questions on this first additional data request. So I see Greg Branch, I saw Celeste, Linda Roska, Gary Dworkin.
Is now exiting.
Do we have is Sarah Arispe with us? Sarah, are you able to join us?
Yes, I am here.
Wonderful, welcome.
Happy
to have you. And Linda, who else am I forgetting? I think we have. And Teresa Barzo. It looks like Teresa, you're with us today too.
Yes, this is Teresa. I'm here.
Wonderful, great. Thanks for joining us. So I think we have the full advisory board today, with the exception of Adam Leonard, but we do have Angie Stout, who's here for him, and we will allow her to jump in if she has any questions about projects, especially tied to the TWC data. She will not be allowed to vote in terms of the projects. Okay, well, let's move back then to the project at hand. Do we have any questions or comments on the school performance additional data request? If not, then do I have a motion regarding this request?
So moved, Gary.
Second, Greg Branch.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The additional data request is granted. The next request for additional data is UT Dallas 115, a major decision, the consequences of college course taking. Do we have any questions or comments in terms of this request for additional data? If not, do I have a motion regarding this additional data request?
So moved, Celeste.
And that's so moved for
Approval.
Second, Kathy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yona Meiselman
Is now joining.
Okay. Did we get everyone? Any opposed? All right. If not, motion passes and the request is approved. Moving on to the next additional data request, UT Dallas 119, how do public health interventions impact educational outcomes? Do we have any questions or comments regarding this additional request? And I have one. Is Dr. Ballas with us on the call today? And actually, I believe, now that I'm looking at my notes, I believe we did discuss this prior to the meeting. You discussed all three of the additional requests. Is that correct? You sent a revision? Sounds like she's not here, but I think I made a note and then realized we had a revised. Oh, hi, you are with us. Thanks.
Yes, sorry, I was just unmuting, so I missed what you had said. Sorry about that.
No problem. I realized that you had actually sent a revised version of of the data request for the attendance and discipline data and the additional STAR data. So I was going to ask because the first one that I saw, it didn't go into all the pieces. But if there's no, it's fine. We get the revised request. Are there any questions or comments from the advisory board?
Is now joining.
If not, do we have a motion? Do we have a motion regarding this request?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? If not, motion passes. Thank you very much. Sorry for the confusion there. I appreciate you being with us today, Dr. Baylor.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. And now moving on to the next project, the next group of projects. These are extensions. And so the first one, extension 1, is University of Houston 009, examining Puentes, the impact of community college students in Texas. Do you have any questions or comments regarding this extension request? And I'm going to go to my notes here and make sure we're very clear about what the timing is on these. So this is a request until May 5th, 2022, and the reason it doesn't end at the time of a meeting is because this is an extension to a pandemic extension. Is that correct, Linda Hargrove?
This is Kathy. I can confirm that's correct.
Okay, great.
Sorry, Linda. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you have more information than I do. That's fine.
So thank you. And then there's also supplemental data. Is it new to be adding the supplemental data, or has always been part of this project? I believe this is just for an extension.
Correct.
Correct, Kathy? Okay.
Yes.
So let's just be sure we handle that supplemental data appropriately. Okay. Do we have a motion regarding this extension request?
I motion to approve, Celeste.
Do we have a second?
This is Teresa. I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? If not, then motion passes. The extension is granted. On to extension number 2. And this is UT Austin 099, Impact Analysis on Local Scholarship Dollars, Innovating Financial Incentives for College Readiness, Enrollment, and Completion. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this extension request? If not, do we have a motion?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second, Gary.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes and the extension is approved. Thank you. And now moving on to the next one. Extension 3, UT Austin 118, Understanding the Efficacy of Policies to Improve College Access. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this extension request? This one was just to allow time for peer review. Okay. If not, do we have a motion?
This is Teresa. I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Greg Branch, second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes, and this is approved. And I know Linda would want me to say the period it's approved till 3/7. I'm sorry, requested to 3/11/2023. So it's a 2-year extension. Okay, extension number 4. And I'm sorry, I think we're all set there. Extension number 4 is, I've got too many papers in a small place today. This one is UT Austin 116, Understanding the Causes and Consequences of Ability Tracking. Do we have any comments or questions on this extension request? Okay, and let me just do my due diligence here. This is a 2-year extension. Okay, do we have a motion regarding this extension?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
I'll
Do we
second.
have
This
a
is
second?
Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Extension is granted. Moving on to extension number 5. This is evaluating post-high school transition supports in Central Texas, UT Austin 112. Do we have any questions or comments on this? I will note that it's an extension request. The researcher is going to add some additional time, I guess, to adjust to include some data during the pandemic, and so but it's tied back to the same research question that was originally proposed. I just wanted to mention that. Any comments or questions? If not, do we have a motion regarding this extension? And this is a 1-year extension. So again, do we have a motion?
So moved, Gary.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second, Greg Branch.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion, any opposed? All right, then motion passes and the extension is granted. Okay, moving on to what I believe is the last extension request, but this also is an extension request with an additional data request. And we weren't aware of this when we put the agenda out, but when we posted the agenda, but because the project has been posted, we can consider that additional data request as well. This is for UT Dallas 110, Gender Peer Effects in School. And I believe this extension is, and Linda, correct me if I'm
Is
wrong.
now joining.
It says it's through 12/2021, correct? And I'm hearing someone background noise on the phone. If someone could mute, please.
Changes in capacity within villages, District 6 to 5.
Is
If
now
someone-
exiting.
Hearing background. Okay, great. Okay, so let me go back to this. This is a request till December 2021. Is that correct? I'll go to Greg Branch for that, is what I'm seeing here. And they are seeking additional TEA course completion and TEA PEAM staff data. So I am happy to ask for more information about that request since you did not receive it, since it wasn't clear that this was an additional data request as well as an extension. Would any of the advisory board members like additional information, or do they feel like they have enough information from the extension and data request? Okay. The one other issue with this project, and I think we're okay. So Greg, this is basically, it's a request for additional information. These are the researchers who are working from Europe, but we do have remote access. They have we do have remote access for a researcher who's in the U.S. Is that correct?
That's correct. The Europe-based researchers have not been accessing from Europe. They've not been able to access since before the pandemic. They have employed a researcher who's working at Princeton and who does have remote access authorization from within the U.S. And to be clear, our network support group has blocked all out of U.S. access through our firewall, so that there's no question of working from outside of the U.S.
Okay. And they noted they're working on a promising new methodology, but this is still tied to the same research questions. Is that correct?
Certainly.
Data and request.
Yes, absolutely. It's within scope for the proposal as submitted.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on behalf of advisory board members? If not, then do we have a motion regarding extension of this project to, and Greg, December 2021, it was just unusual not to have it be for a year. Should we address it as a...
Well, so perhaps we should. At the time this was written, there's some uncertainty that perhaps remains in finality. I was discussing this with Linda Hargrove last night concerning the COVID extension latitude. I think what we would request is that this be extended for 1 year in addition to the modified end date under the COVID extension.
Okay, so that would bring us to that 12/21, and that's why that is
certainly
included.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you. I think that makes sense. All right, do we have a motion regarding extension of this project till 12/2021? And including the additional data requested.
I move to approve, including the additional data request. This is Celeste.
Do we have a second?
Kathy, I second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Motion passes, and I believe that brings us through our additional data and extension requests. Thank you to all the researchers who joined us, and good luck with your continued work on your project. Now we're going to move in to our new proposals. So Linda, if we could advance.
I'm trying.
I thought maybe something was going on there.
There we go. I don't know.
Okay, wonderful. Or that you stepped out for a minute. Great. Okay, so our first proposal, and this one includes a remote access request. This is for University of Houston, Project 031, the effects of the grade retention policy on minority students. So do we have the researchers, one of the researchers with us today to present a brief overview of this project?
Yes, I'm Jizong, a first-year PhD student from Texas A&M University. And today, my advisor, Andrew, also joined the meeting with me. I will do the overview.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Then I begin. Large numbers of students. Okay. Large numbers of students are retained each year, with significantly higher rates of retention for minority students. While the goal of grade retention is to improve students' long-run success in school, we know relatively little about whether this policy
is now exiting.
My project focuses on understanding the short, medium, and long-term effects of grade retention, and extend to which these effects vary between white and minority students. My main approach is to estimate the effect of retention induced by a test score cutoff, comparing the subsequent education and wages of individuals with test score just below and just above a cutoff that determines whether students are retained. Texas ERC data are essential to my study because they link a student's test score in elementary school to subsequent academic performance, college enrollment, and wage outcomes. The results of this analysis will directly benefit education policymakers in Texas by providing greater insight into how test-based retention affects students, and the extent to which these effects vary by race and ethnicity. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the part of the advisory board?
I had a quick question on the remote access piece. I think the students' faculty advisors are asking for access as well. Is that right?
I think it's only me request access to the data. My advisor are not requesting access to the data.
Okay.
Well, maybe we should. Maybe I should open. I've got the proposal open, but not.
I actually have it. That's actually. I'm sorry. This is Kathy. I have it open too. That's actually not what was indicated in the remote access form. The remote access form indicated that both of the advisors would also have access to the data. So if that's a change and only the student needs access, that we could make. I would suggest making that as a friendly amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
Linda, did you have a concern, or you just wanted to be clear?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. I was wondering why they needed access if they were going to be running this study. I thought this was for a dissertation.
Yeah, this is Andrew Barr. I'm one of G's advisors, and I think that G is the only one that needs access.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, Linda, I will say we do sometimes have situations where a graduate student might want to talk with an advisor regarding their research. And I think just to be clear that if just the graduate student has access, that means they can discuss their released results with their advisor, but not, be looking and sharing the student level data with the advisor. Correct. So just wanted to make sure that that's understood.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
So in this case, it will just be right. I just wanted to make sure if it's just the student researcher that everyone's clear on that the remote access is only for those who are submitted and approved. Okay. All right. So then this will just be remote access then for the graduate student. And do we have any other questions or comments? I did have a couple of things. One is that I think it's important for this project to understand in terms of those grade placement committees. And the reason I'm actually speaking to this is back when that policy was in place, I was working at the Texas Education Agency and was actually involved in putting this manual together. And one thing that you didn't mention was, or certainly not in as pronounced a way, was the fact that those committees, one thing they absolutely looked at was student performance. So those students who had not passed the required statewide assessment but were performing well in class versus not performing well. And I know you were focusing on them getting promoted based on maturity or parent involvement. I also, at one point you focused on that they were being promoted because the parents were rich, which is something that I think would be probably hard to get to with the data that's available. But I did want to make sure there was an understanding that those committees also were expected to look carefully at the students' performance in the classroom as part of those deliberations and think about how that might affect your research design.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Our main strategy will just focus on those students that failed the test and actually retake, and compared to the students who passed the test score and promoted. For the student who failed the test but promoted by the grade placement committee, we are not estimate the effects for that. For the third question, we will try to see whether the promotion distinction will correlated to the teacher or student met characteristic. Yeah.
Okay, I was just suggesting that for those students who were not advanced, that was one piece that the committee was probably looking at is their performance in class, which isn't something you're going to be able to have information about generally, but that I wanted to mention that should be considered. All right.
We really appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you so much.
I had one comment, and that was just that it looks like you can only answer question 2 and 3 after 2012, because both those require linking. Is that what your plan is for those two?
Yeah, that's true, because the data for the teacher classroom assignment is only available from 2012. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure you understood that the first one you can use the earlier data, but the only one that can use the earlier data really will be the question 1.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other questions or comments? I will also add, just be conscious of the fact that when you're using the term minority student, that it might benefit the project to be specific, because I think specifically you're looking at African American and Hispanic students and not all minority students, and also think about maybe thinking of them as underrepresented students, because in some cases those populations aren't minority students in Texas schools, in certain schools. Does that helpful? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Not. Do we have a motion regarding this proposal? And let's tackle the proposal and the remote access together. So do we have a motion regarding the proposal and remote access? For the proposal and the remote access would just be for the graduate student researcher. And G, is it G? I want to make sure I pronounce your name right.
Right.
Yeah, just for G. Okay. So again, do we have a motion?
Greg Branch, I move that we approve the proposal and the remote access application.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Teresa, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then the motion passes. This is for approval for the project and remote access, but remote access for Zhejiang and as the sole researcher for the project. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next project, and
Julie.
Yeah,
Julie. This is Linda Hargrove.
did I miss? Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but maybe this is the point. I believe it was extension 1.
Yes.
Did we include the remote access request in that extension request?
Oh, I am not sure that we did. And so thank you for bringing that up. That was, in fact, all of those were remote access requests, Linda, correct?
For the new proposals, not for the extensions. Just one extension had a remote access request.
Just one. Oh, okay. And that
extension 1.
And yeah, we didn't. Why don't we go back to that and just take a quick vote to make sure we get it recorded. So going back to, and this is extension 1 UH009. Is that correct, Linda?
Yes, it is.
Puente project.
Yes.
Okay. And that's in fact why I had the note about making sure the supplemental data was handled appropriately. Okay, because it is also a new remote access request along with an extension request. Okay. Do we have a motion for adding remote access to and I'll phrase it this way, to approve remote access for the already approved extension for UH009? And do we have a motion from the advisory board to approve that remote access component?
I move to approve the remote access. This is Celeste.
Greg Branch, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you all. Thanks, Linda, for pointing that out. I'm sorry I missed that. That's why you're so valuable.
I'm sorry I missed it the first time.
Working on this. Yep. No, thanks for keeping me honest here.
Making
sure we cover everything.
I wanted to make sure.
So let's jump back now to our proposal 2. I believe we're all set. And this is University of Houston 032, High School Course Choice in a Dynamic Tournament of College Admissions. Is the researcher for this project with us? And let me get it open here.
Hello, everyone. This is Ritika. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi. We can.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. Can you please give us a brief overview of your project?
Yes. So I want to analyze the determinants of how students make course choice decisions in high school. Specifically, I want to analyze how feedback from the school about their class rank influences this decision making. I think this is an important question because of mainly 2 reasons. First, course choice in high school has long-lasting implications. And second, a lot of schools are debating whether or not to disclose the class rank to students. Because of the top 10% plan in Texas, college admissions work like a dynamic tournament. In a dynamic tournament, feedback about the participants' performance is an important determinant of the participants' actions. The disclosure of class rank to the student at the end of every year works as a feedback on their performance. Following the literature on dynamic games in economics, I plan to estimate a structural model of discrete choice embedded in a dynamic tournament. I will model course choice as a function of gender, ethnicity, economic status, past course choices, and class rank. I will then conduct a counterfactual policy experiment to analyze the effect of rank feedback policy on course choice. Finally, I believe this model will shed light on how students from different backgrounds make course choices, and I hope to benefit the education policy in Texas by contributing to policies that focus on improving representation of underrepresented students in advanced courses, improving college readiness, and reducing within-school segregation.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments from the advisory board members?
Yeah, hi, this is Angie from TWC.
Hi.
Yes, Angie.
I just have a quick question. Your research question number 5, where you asked, should schools eliminate the disclosure of class rank to students at the end of every grade? Is that something you're actually going to be able to do analysis for? Because to me, it read a little bit more like a possible policy suggestion based on what you find from the other research questions. So I'm just not sure if that should be a research question or if you should save it maybe for a possible discussion section.
If I understand your question correctly, I'll be estimating a model while having a full disclosure of class rank. And then using the recovered parameters of this model, I will run a counterfactual policy experiment in which there is no disclosure of class rank. And then I will compare the outcomes of the 2 outcomes. And that's how I plan to address the question of whether eliminating the disclosure of class rank is a good idea.
Okay, that sounds good. I wasn't clear from reading the proposal, but that sounds great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to recommend that you look at our website. We have a couple policy briefs that people have already looked at research. And if I'm not mistaken, we have an expert on this meeting. His name is Rich Murphy. He's a professor in economics at UT. And he has done several projects looking at rank. Now, he has also created his own ranking too. But he has a lot of good information about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
hi,
thank
I'm
you
here.
so much.
Happy to talk anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you so much.
And I do think it's really key for understanding this project that you are going to be creating a class rank based on available data, that it's not going to be an actual class rank. But I had a little concern as you were trying to get an understanding of whether students, might make choices to take less challenging courses based on class rank. The fact that actual class rank is not available, and the policies around Texas vary widely in terms of advanced courses. And for some students, in some schools, there's a lot of waiting for advanced courses where students will get a lot more grade points. And in some cases, it's AP courses. In some cases, it's dual credit. Some schools include non-academic courses like PE in their class ranks. Others don't. So I think you ought to. I was a little concerned about making assumptions that class ranks are going to be calculated in a similar way, especially knowing that you won't have the actual information that you're going to be creating one. So I don't know if you can address that concern.
Thank you. That's definitely a concern. I'll have to mainly depend on a noisy measure of class rank. I felt a bit confident about doing this because I saw a paper that's already been published using this data set, and they constructed a noisy measure of class rank. And your second concern about non-uniform grading policies across different districts, I'll have to probably hand collect some data about how districts are grading students in the years that I'm looking at. So I have to address that district by district or school by school. Yes.
Great. No, I'm happy to hear that, because I was thinking if you actually were able to look at the districts and see how they do it, that could really help inform that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then also at one point you talk about graduation requirements in Texas, and they've gotten progressively more rigorous. I think that I would just look carefully at what the requirements are, because some things might be more rigorous and some things might be less rigorous than over time. So rather than make that blanket statement, maybe just look at the periods of time and think about what the requirements were and how they tie into what you're finding would be another suggestion.
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. Now, was there any? I think there's supplemental data. Is there supplemental data on this, Linda? I'm just looking, and I have a note about CCM.
No.
Oh no, okay. I think
No,
I'm okay.
no.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. There's not supplement. Okay, great. Then any other questions or comments on the part of the advisory board? Okay, I'm going to mention one other thing, because I don't know if that was in the data request as you've discussed this. Yes, you do have it. Okay, one thing that will be helpful is to look at the CBM 00B report, which is the higher ed admission report. You're not going to have it for all students, but it will give you top 10 and top 11 to 25%. So that hopefully will help you to see how effective your GPA calculations are. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. Anything else? If not, do we have a motion regarding this proposal?
Branch, I move that we approve the proposal.
I'll second. This is Celeste. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations. Good luck with your research. Thank you for joining us. All right.
And
Moving
this
on to our
includes
next
remote access.
And remote access. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you, Linda. And this is also for remote access. Why don't we have a motion regarding remote access for proposal 2? Do we have a motion to approve remote access for UH 032?
I'm sorry, Julie. I also move that we approve the remote access request that goes along with the proposal too.
And I also second it, Celeste.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Motion passes. And you can see I'm still getting used to our remote access request because this is a new component of our approval. So, Melissa, hopefully you'll learn from me and know moving forward to be sure to include those. All right, let's move on to proposal 3. And again, thank you for joining us. Congratulations for your project. And then proposal 3 is, and this includes for remote access, University of Houston 033, Texas Educator Pipeline, identifying barriers to educator and student success. Do we have a researcher or researchers with us to give us an overview?
You do. This is Jim Van Overshelp from Texas State.
Hi, Jim. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And good luck on your next venture.
Thank you very much.
It's been great working with you. So this research is being conducted in collaboration with Minda Lopez from Texas State, Sarah Guthrie from Texas A&M Commerce, and Christina Ellis from Sam Houston State. Remote access is requested for all 4 of us to have access to the data. This is a 5-year project where we're looking at the educator preparation program pipeline from admission into ed prep programs through 10 years post-graduation or completion of the program. Most of the research questions are directly in alignment with state and federal ed prep accountability standards and with national and state educator prep accreditation standards. We want to know which malleable factors are associated with long-term success of educators and their students. So that ERC, of course, is the ideal location for this kind of longitudinal research because of the confidential nature of the student and educator data. There are 3 major themes within this study. The first is we are examining factors and outcomes while teacher candidates are in the ed prep program, so from admission to graduation or completion. The second theme, we are examining factors and outcomes associated with educator employment. So being hired and persistence in the classroom, transitions while they're there. And then finally, we're examining the impacts of educator prep characteristics and teacher candidate characteristics on P12 student success. So our ultimate goal is to inform state policy around educator preparation programs, but also educator prep program design. Supplemental data are needed about students enrolled in Texas traditional and alternative ed prep programs. And we will work with these EPPs, the ed prep programs, to ensure that they prepare their data and submit it to TEA in a uniform way. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding this proposal from the advisory board?
Yes, hi, this is Angie again from TWC. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the lag time with the wage data. You didn't have an end date to your study, and it looks like you need wage data going through at least part of 2025. So depending on how far into the year you need to go for that data, some of those quarters won't be available until 2026.
Right.
So
this is a 5-year. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Angie.
No, I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that so that you know how to schedule your end date appropriately.
Yep, I am aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Can you talk a little bit more, Jim? You talked about the mitigation strategy for protecting the anonymity of the data. So this is coming in from the different teacher prep programs around the state and will go directly to TEA. It
Correct.
Won't be going to the researchers or to some central place. It'll be going to TEA directly from there, and then it can be anonymized. Great.
Exactly.
I just want to make sure I fully understood that.
Yep.
Great. And are the results going to be by school, or are they going to be, what's the level of granularity in terms of what you expect the published results to cover?
What we do not plan to do it at the program level. What we do plan to do is aggregate across types of programs. So not only the sort of the crude grouping of traditional versus alternative preparation program, but 1-year internship programs versus student teaching programs versus year-long residency programs and things like that. So it'll be aggregated at the different characteristics of the kinds of programs.
Okay, thanks. Because a lot of it was descriptive, and I just wanted to get a sense of how detailed you were going to be in terms of those data. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, do we have a motion regarding this proposal?
Mike Virial
is now joining.
I move to approve this proposal. This is Celeste.
All right, Celeste moves to approve. Do we have a second?
Greg Branch, I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, and this is, I'm sorry, this is for remote access and for approving the proposal. I caught myself. So Greg and Celeste, you also motion and second regarding remote access as well as approval.
I motion for remote access as well. Celeste.
Thank you.
I second accordingly.
Greg second. Thank you. All in favor for remote access approval as well as approval of the project, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Congratulations. Good luck with your project. And you're welcome. And let's move on to proposal number 4. We'll give Linda a minute to.
Sarah,
she's trying to juggle
is
taking
now
notes
exiting.
and everything else. Okay. Proposal number 4 is UT Austin 149, class rank and long run outcomes. Do we have a researcher with us today for this project?
Hello, yeah, Richard Murphy here.
Great, welcome. Can you please provide a brief overview of your proposal?
Sure. So this is a paper about where students rank academically in elementary school and how it affects the rest of their school lives, including their college applications and how much they're earning in their mid-20s. So this is a joint project with Jeff Denning at BYU and Felix Weinhardt at the Europa University. We're asking for remote access for me and Jeff, who currently both have access to ERC projects. Felix is just in there to help with the writing. And so even though he's on the project, he's at very long distance, i.e. intercontinental distance from the data. And so what we're looking at, where it's kind of 2 parts. We've been working for the last 5 years now, on what are the impacts of student achievement measures and earnings in universities, and we've been presenting that, and we're submitting it to top journals, and we're hoping that this will go in soon. But whilst we've been presenting it, we keep on being asked the same questions, which are, if the ranking of my kid is so important in their elementary school, should I send my kid to a school where they're going to be worst in class, but amongst really good peers, or should I send them to a place where the best in class, worst kids, right?
Is now exiting.
Sorry. And so there's a trade-off that parents need to think about in terms of rank and traditional peer effect. And there's also issues relating to if people of different backgrounds react to their ranking differently, then that may have impacts on groupings of students within schools or across schools. And if there's different test score distributions in schools, it may be easier to ascertain the rankings in some schools than others. Like you can imagine, if the test score distribution was very compressed, it may be hard for students to work out where they're ranked. But compared to a test score distribution where it's very spread out, it may be easier to ascertain where they're ranking. And so all these features blend into each other. And so that's what we want to explore next. That's like the next phase. And so we're hoping that we can use the ERC as like the base of rank literature. Like lots of rank papers are being written around the world, and we want to keep the focus on Texas.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments regarding this project? Okay. If not, do we, and sorry, you can tell it's legislative session. I got distracted for a second there by a text. Okay, do we have a motion regarding this project? If there are, I take it there are no other questions or comments. And the motion should be related to remote access for as well as approval of UT Austin 149.
This is Kathy. I move to approve both the proposal and request for remote access.
Do we have a second?
Greg Branch, I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. All right. Then the motion passes. Congratulations, your project and the remote access for the project are approved. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Good luck on your project.
Have a nice afternoon.
Okay. And now I'm going to finish my text and we'll, okay. Next project is UT Austin 150, A School Like Mine, investigating the influence of geographic and demographic congruence on new teachers' career trajectories in Texas. Do we have a researcher with us today to address this project or give us a brief overview of this project?
Yes, we do. Good afternoon. This is Wes Edwards.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Oh, I see you there now.
Thank you. So thank you to the advisory board for hearing this proposal. My name is Wes Edwards. I'm an assistant professor at the College of Education at the University of North Texas. And I collaborated on this proposal with Dr. Jacob Kirksey, who's an assistant professor at the College of Education in Texas Tech. We are asking for remote access for us as well as for additional researchers. Two of my colleagues at the University of North Texas and the College of Education who have experience with administrative data and also with similar questions that we're asking in this study. And then also for a graduate student, Jennifer Freeman, who's working on a PhD in education policy at Penn State. So to give you a brief overview, by their fifth year, nearly 40% of new teachers in Texas leave their initial position. This pattern is concerning as new teachers are more likely to work in the hardest to staff schools serving low income and historically marginalized communities. Despite evidence that teacher turnover harms achievement, especially for students of color, collectively the research, policy, and leadership communities do not fully understand how to best retain and support new teachers. So in this study, we plan to focus on two key overarching questions. We want to look at the relationship between teacher to school geographic and demographic congruence and retention and mobility patterns for new teachers. And then we also want to look at the relationship between teacher to school geographic and demographic congruence for new teachers and academic outcomes for the high school students that they teach. So using the ERC data on new teachers when they were students, we'll create unique measures of geographic and demographic congruence to predict longitudinal career outcomes and student outcomes, such as graduation and college enrollment. And importantly, we'll investigate how these two outcomes vary across high-need contexts, such as districts with greater shares of eco-dis students and urban and rural districts suffering from higher teacher turnover and chronic staffing shortages. We believe that the benefit to the state will be large and far-reaching. We believe our results will provide school and district leaders, as well as policymakers, with evidence to improve policy and practice related to cost-effective, localized teacher recruitment efforts. And in fact, multiple school and district leaders that I currently work with in the North Texas region and those that I collaborated with in the Austin area have expressed the need for improved teacher recruitment and hiring systems, especially for hard-to-staff rural contexts and urban contexts where hiring racially and ethnically underrepresented groups of teachers is also crucial. So we think, again, our results could support more localized teacher recruitment and preparation efforts towards improving teacher job fit, reducing turnover, and in the end of the day, improving student outcomes across Texas.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from our advisory board members? Okay, well, this is going to give me a chance to get this right the first time. Do we have a motion regarding remote access approval and overall approval for UT Austin 150?
Greg Branch, I move that we approve UT Austin's 150 proposal along with the remote access request.
Do we have a second?
This is Teresa, I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with your research.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service. Good luck with your next career move.
Thank you very much. Yeah, or my non-career move. I think travel is on the agenda.
Oh, even better then. So, enjoy that.
Even better. Yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next project is a withdrawal, and then we're going to move to proposal number 7. This is UT Austin 152, and youth substance use and recovery school attendance, short and long-term consequences. And do we have one of the researchers with us today for this project?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. Can we have a brief overview, please?
Sure. My name is Bogan Kim. I am a PhD student in economics at UT Austin. So my project is about the youth substance use and recovery school attendance. So to put it as my motivation, youth substance use is one of the most serious problems facing today's schools in the United States. And in response to this problem, alternative high schools designed for adolescents recovering from a substance use disorder have been emerging as a continuing care research since 1977 and opening throughout the United States. Although there are more than 40 recovery high schools across the U.S., little has been known about their effectiveness. So in this project, I propose to provide a comprehensive analysis of first, the effect of youth substance use, and second, the effect of recovery high school attendance on short and long-term educational and labor market outcomes. To estimate the effect of substance use, I will take advantage of several drug policies that cause shocks to drug availability and drug prices. And to identify who are selling or using controlled substances in schools, I will use disciplinary action files, which provide information on disciplinary actions for drug-related problems and alcohol-related problems. And as outcomes, I will study attendance, test scores, disciplinary action, high school graduation, and college outcome, and employment and earnings. As Texas has the largest number of recovery high schools in the United States, I believe my project will provide a unique opportunity to study the effectiveness of recovery high school attendance.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the advisory board? So I had a couple of quick things on this, and I'm pulling up the request. So, are you going to be providing, thinking about these high schools? And apparently there are 9 in Texas. Is that correct? You said out of the 40 nationally, there are 9 in Texas.
Yes.
Are you able to identify the students that attend them at any point in time that sort of may move from their main high school, their home high school, to one of these schools and back again? Or are you only able to know the students who are permanent students at these high schools? Because I know sometimes with alternative high school, students move in and out, and it can be hard to track them, frankly. So I don't know as much about these schools.
So as far as I understand, if they are in the public school system, I can track them whether they are in homeschool now and then they enrolled in recovery school and go back to homeschool. But if they move out of public school system and enrolled in private school, actually I cannot observe them in our data.
Right. Yeah, we don't have private high school data, but I didn't know from coming from their public high school in their neighborhood type situation if you're able to see that. And how would you plan to share the data? A little concerned. This feels like a sensitive topic that we want to be careful around in terms of privacy, and obviously any results would go through FERPA review. But do you plan to share the data by school campus, or do you plan to share your results by overall? Here's what I found for these, for these schools in Texas, for the 9 schools identified without specific school level data.
As you mentioned, these students are not very representative in Texas, and we have relatively small number of students in recovery high school. So I'm planning to aggregate the whole 9 school information.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the advisory board? I'm going to look to the people in K-12 and Linda. Any concern about remote access for this particular project? Sounds like we're okay. Just wanted to do our due diligence since we had questions about data sensitivity, and I know these are data that a lot of researchers have access to. It's just thinking about the focus of this project and what's being pulled particularly into these analyses. Okay, good. Well, I think that aggregation is helpful for me in terms of any concern I had. Any other comments, questions? If not, do we have a motion regarding remote access for UTA 152 and overall approval for this proposal?
Greg Branch.
So moved, Gary. Or second, then, Gary.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Good luck with your project. The next one.
Julie?
Oh, yes. Linda? Yes.
Remote access? Did that include?
It did. I noted remote access, and I believe that's how if every heard it. No, I think that's okay.
Okay.
And moving on to proposal 8. Okay. And just going to wait for Linda. This is UT Austin 153, and it's for remote access as well as initial consideration. This is on-ramps and the teacher labor force. Do we have the researcher with us today for this project?
Yes, this is Matt Gianni. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Matt, can you please provide an overview of your project?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, as always. Many of you are probably familiar with the on-ramps program at UT Austin, but I'll give a brief description of that and then go into the study itself. On-ramps is UT Austin's signature dual enrollment initiative, where high school students can enroll in college-level courses designed and delivered by UT Austin and earn credit from UT upon successful completion of the course. We have had access to the...
Is now exiting.
Someone exited. I'm boring people.
Sorry.
I apologize. So we have had access to the ERC data for our student level research, and we found that participation in on-ramps is associated with an increased likelihood of students attending college, with their attending a four-year college. And we're now looking at students' long-term outcomes, such as persistence and attainment. But we've yet to really look at teacher outcomes. And what folks might be less familiar with is the on-ramps model in relation to the teacher experience. So all teachers who teach on-ramps courses, their first year in the program receive 80 hours of professional learning, including a 2-week professional learning institute that's held in person, at least in non-COVID years, on UT campus. There are separate professional learning institutes that happen in the fall and in the spring with teachers. There's also monthly meetings and webinars. Teachers record themselves giving lectures and upload those recordings so that their colleagues can comment on them and provide feedback on their pedagogy and instructional delivery. So the professional learning model is actually extremely extensive for teachers to participate in the program. And we've also found that the longer teachers participate in the program, the better their students do, even controlling for teachers themselves using kind of a teacher fixed effects approach. And that's using our kind of internal analyses. What we get asked a lot by districts and school leaders is whether participating in on-ramps has any relationship with teachers' likelihood of retention in their school, retention in the field of teaching overall, and their professional advancement. We believe that it does, and we hope that it does, but we haven't been able to investigate that because we haven't had access to the ERC data, the teacher level data, to conduct those analyses. Just as a bit more background, I had actually submitted a version of this study as an amendment to our student level research. The advisory board suggested that this would constitute an independent and new study and encouraged us to create a new study, and that's the purpose of this study. So essentially what we are going to do is take teachers who have participated in on-ramps, which is about 1,500 to 2,000 teachers who have participated since its inception. And we're going to examine the relationship between teachers' participation in on-ramps and their likelihood of being retained in teaching, being retained in their school, and professional advancement as defined by, getting a higher degree or advancing in their career, becoming an instructional coach, a counselor, an administrator, something like that. So we'll essentially be linking data across multiple years, using a kind of teacher fixed effects approach to compare teachers' outcomes over time, and also comparing teachers to similar teachers controlling for the course that teachers teach, the school that they're located in, the demographic characteristics of those schools, the student characteristics, and so forth, in order to better isolate the relationship between participation in on-ramps and teachers' professional outcomes. So that's a high-level overview. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Questions, comments from our advisory board members? I have one small one. Are you going to take into account, it just reminded me a little bit when I was reading about the teacher community, that the one thing that I think would be comparable would be for AP teachers who are also teaching college level material, that there are some professional communities. Are you going to try to find a way to control for that, or to see if a teacher is doing both, or maybe if that at a school where there are a lot of AP teachers doing that, if you might, it might look more similar to what you see for on-ramps teachers because they're getting exposed to some similar professional development, or not, I shouldn't say similar, but exposed to professional development geared towards people teaching college material.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to be clear, the goal would not be to necessarily compare on-ramps versus other programs like AP in terms of the kind of relative effectiveness of the two programs, because that's kind of a muddy comparison for various reasons. But we would like to control for things like the specific courses that teachers currently teach, which is why we're requesting that data, the course level data and the teacher course link data, so we can control for the specific courses. So that would include things like whether the course is advanced or dual credit, and advanced obviously being like AP or IB. My recollection is that the advanced indicator is a combination of AP, IB, and others, and potentially other courses defined as advanced. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we can go into the course codes and maybe look at AP courses specifically, but I don't know if there's an AP flag per se. But regardless, we are planning to control for the other types of courses that teachers are teaching, once again, to better isolate the relationship between on-ramps participation and teacher outcomes.
Good, and yeah, Linda may be able to speak to that. I know that it was pretty clear from the designation in the past if a course was IB on those course completions, or AP or IB. But
yeah, it's part of the service code for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so you should be able to tell. Good. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? And let me just make sure I don't have anything here. Then do I have a motion regarding, and this is for remote access approval as well as for approval of the project. Do I have a motion from the advisory board?
Greg Branch, I move that we approve proposal 8, UT Austin 153, along with its accompanying remote access request.
Second, Gary.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations. Good luck with your research. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Julie. It's a little bittersweet. This is our last time. You will be missed. Thank you for everything. And also, good luck.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye. All right. Moving on to our next project. This is UT Dallas 142, exploring student and institutional responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we have some more familiar faces here. Do we have a researcher with us to provide an overview of this project?
Yes, Julie. This is Rodney Andrews. This proposal is joint with Drs. Trey Miller and Drs. Holly Kosowitz. So the COVID-19 pandemic has presented a unprecedented disruption to operations in higher education. And in particular, our proposal focuses on institutional responses and student responses to these unprecedented changes. Given some of the structural inequities that exist, our concern is that the pandemic makes it particularly difficult for underserved and underrepresented students to succeed in higher education. So we propose to examine a set of 5 questions using a mixed methods approach that provides some insight on strategies that institutions have taken and maybe and some information that points towards the efficacy of some responses. So these questions include which students have re-enrolled in college and which students have not. We also question we also have questions about to what extent are colleges succeeding, students succeeding in their new learning environment, and to what extent do success rates vary by student demographic characteristics. We also wish to focus on changes in the mode of instruction for Texas higher education institutions. And so we will ask questions about how have colleges shifted their mode of instruction in response to the pandemic, and how does this vary across colleges and sectors, where by sectors perhaps we mean majors. Does the mode of instruction vary across majors within colleges? And finally, what specific challenges have colleges faced during the pandemic, and what strategies have they found most promising in addressing them? We recognize that our response to the pandemic is ongoing, and so we hope to take advantage of the data offered by the ERC to provide some reasonable information on these pressing issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on behalf of the advisory board members? I have two small things that I hope will be of help to you. One is that in terms of the data that's coming into the coordinating board on mode of instruction, we actually had some challenges with schools during COVID because of how much and how quickly things changed. So right now, the definitions of non-face-to-face instruction fall into fully online and hybrid, and then there is a face-to-face definition, and it's pretty much those were to be identified for an entire class, and we found ourselves in situations where, some students would be fully face-to-face, some students would be hybrid, some students would be jumping in online because they couldn't travel. We had a lot of calls from schools about we're really struggling to fit these innovative things we're doing to try to deal with the pandemic into the mode of instruction category. Of course, we had the whole situation where everyone started face-to-face last spring and then everyone moved to online. And so we told schools that they could leave it as it was initially done in terms of leaving it as face-to-face if that's what they had initially reported for courses. But then there's the end of course reporting where we said it's okay if you want to make adjustments there. So I think you will find the data is a little messier than you might like for this, but we had talked about surveying our schools, our higher ed institutions, to ask them what they specifically did in terms of how they were offering courses in the fall. So that we would get more detail from what the different schools were doing. So please do reach out to the office, to Melissa if I'm not here, and ask if we've got more detailed information on what schools were offering. Because again, we I think hope to be able to reach out and find out more. Mostly we were telling schools, if in doubt, report hybrid. If it's really some kind of an unusual combination, go ahead and report those classes as hybrid. So learning, the LTAC committee, which is the Technical Advisory Committee, they're going to be looking at definitions, and we'll probably see some new categories in our reporting manual moving forward. But just wanted you to be aware of that, and also
thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then one other thing in the CBM data, and this is sort of related because it's COVID related. We had a lot of schools who asked if they could give students incompletes last spring and this summer, and so we're going to be missing probably a lot more grades than usual in the CBM WOS, but we did tell schools that we would open up a later window for them to submit those grades. We haven't done that yet, but that is something we'll be doing this spring. So once we get those grades updated, we'll move them over to the ERC. We'll update the CBM WOS data so that we have as many grades in there as possible. But I think a lot of students couldn't quite finish up the work, were given incompletes, and will be, those grades weren't available when the reports were due to us. So another little tip. All right. Well, anyone else? Oh, you're welcome. Anyone else comments or questions? I think we'll be continuing to see more COVID-related proposals or I should say all of you will as time moves on. All right, do we have a motion regarding remote access for this project as well as approval? And this is UTD 142.
This is Celeste. I move to approve remote access in the project for approval.
Do we have a second?
This is Kathy. I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. I'm trying to listen to make sure I'm hearing 5, so I hope someone will jump in with opposed if they do have a concern. All right, thank you. The motion passes, and UTD 142 is approved for remote access and approved for ERC access. So thank you for joining us, Rodney.
Thank you, and thank you for being an avid supporter of the ERC program. I hope you enjoy retirement.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's great working with you over the years. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Proposal 10. And this is including remote, and this includes remote access, UTD 143, COVID-19 recovery, student pace of learning. And do we have researchers with us for this project? I think Credo.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Yes.
Mackie Raymond here for Credo. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
And congratulations on your retirement. That's great.
Thank you.
I'm only slightly jealous.
It was a long time coming, so I'm excited. Thank you. We now just
appreciate
need to get COVID managed. Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present this project to you. The team at Credo over the last years has been looking very extensively at what happened starting in March of last year in terms of the impact of COVID on academic progress of students. And a precursor to this proposal was a 20-state study that we did last year that demonstrated, that estimated that there were huge pauses and losses of learning by students all across the country. And more important than the average was the distribution around the average, that we found students who were in disadvantaged conditions, either because of their prior academic experience or because of their inability to participate in remote learning, were going to have much, much larger negative impacts. And so the question pivoted to us to this proposal, which we're coming to you today with, which is, once we get back to some stable circumstance, possibly in the 21-22 school year, policymakers are going to need to have a good sense of what a reasonable projection would look like for the period of recovery. The real risk that we see is that there's huge policy pressure and pressure from the public to attempt to recover extremely fast, in fact, too fast for students to actually make up the losses that they've received, that they've experienced. So the purpose of this project is to go back and look at pre-COVID longitudinal student experience to try to create estimates of how quickly students make academic progress and what that would give us in terms of an understanding of what a reasonable time frame would be for making sure that students and teachers and schools are supported so that students can, in fact, make the necessary steps to recover and get back on track. So our proposal today is to use Texas data, historical student records, to estimate by both student characteristics and by school characteristics what traditional historical learning pace had looked like and what the variation around those averages look like, so that we can inform policymakers of what that landscape looked like so they can use that in their future planning. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this project? And I do appreciate you sending the additional information along about the genome project, so we could understand how all this fits together. That was helpful.
Happy to do so.
I did have one. This is a small thing. You mentioned ACT, SAT data, and you're just asking for K-12 data. Is that available now in the K-12 data? And Linda Rosca may know the answer to this.
No, it's not.
I didn't think it was. We do have ACT, SAT data for students who apply to public universities in the CBM-OOB report. So, and I don't believe that was included. Is that something that would be helpful to add?
Yes, it would.
Okay. And I think we could go ahead and include that. I think that's the only comment I had.
Appreciate you looking out for us. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I wanted to know. I thought, have I been missing that all those years? Of that? I think years ago we had some data directly from the organizations that went into the ERCs, but I think that was a long time ago. Some kind of special arrangement, but we again do have it on that application report, which can be helpful. All right.
Thank you.
Well, if we don't have any other questions or comments, do we have a motion regarding UTD 143? This is for remote access approval as well as approval for the proposal. This would be including the OOB data. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for approval, including the CBM OOB and remote access proposal.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Teresa. I second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, the proposal is approved, and that's for remote access and including CBM OOB data from the coordinating board. All right.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Yes, you're welcome.
Bye.
Good luck with your research. Bye-bye. All right, moving on. We are on proposal 11, and this is UT Dallas 144, long-term outcomes
Is
of
now
Army
exiting.
Army Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is the JROTC participation. Do we have a researcher with us for this project?
Yes, hi, thanks. This is Melanie Zaber.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Can you please provide us a brief overview of the of your proposal?
Absolutely. So I'm an economist at the nonprofit, nonpartisan RAND Corporation. I'm co-PI of the proposed project, and I'm joined on the call by my colleague, Brian Phillips, who's also a member of our research team. So this is a RAND project funded by the Army to analyze the impact of participating in a high school youth development program, and that's the Army Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC, and look at the impact of participation on education outcomes and early career outcomes. There's more than 300,000 Army JROTC students in the U.S. each year, and more than 200 Texas schools offer JROTC, and there are more than 30,000 students in Texas schools participating in JROTC each year. Despite how common the program is, there's a dearth of studies that look at the longer-term outcomes of JROTC participation, and in particular, papers that actually estimate causal effects. So we plan to take a quasi-experimental approach to compare participating students at schools that offer JROTC with peer students at similar schools that do not offer JROTC. And we anticipate that the results of this project will help state and school leaders with understanding how JROTC might contribute to student outcomes and the Texas goals of post-secondary and career readiness, and also what kinds of schools and students benefit most from participation in the program.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from advisory board members? And this is, in fact, just a one-year project. Is that correct?
That's correct. The publication timeline may go beyond that one-year time frame, but the access to data will only be needed for 1 year.
Okay. And has anyone in the group worked with the ERC data before?
No, we have worked with other state longitudinal data systems, but not with the ERC data specifically.
Okay, so hopefully the learning curve won't be too tight, because I did notice you've got something due to the Army in 7 months or something like that.
I would note that we do have RAND colleagues who have worked with the ERC data who we could consult for some tips. They're not part of our project team, but just to get lay of the land.
Good. I was going to say I am aware of RAND folks from RAND who have worked in the data, so I was going to connect you. But if you're already aware, that's great. They may be helpful given the timeline. Okay. And what are you going to do about the high school GPA? Are you also going to try to generate your own using other data, like on some of the earlier projects we heard about? Or are you going to use the CBM OOB and do the ranges with the top 10% and the 11 to 25%?
I don't know if we had a fixed strategy on that. I must confess to the past proposals, I wasn't able to listen in on all of them. We'd appreciate a rundown of what was talked about. I'm sorry to trouble you for that.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. It's just the high school data doesn't include high school GPA, and sometimes we do have researchers who think we have GPA for high school students. We don't. We do frequently have projects where we'll have researchers who will use available data like test score data, other data about students to try to generate as close a proxy as they can for a GPA. What we do have is for students, and this is similar to the ACT, SAT data I was talking about, for students who apply to a public university in Texas, we have whether they're in the top 10% or the top 11 to 25%. So that's certainly something that researchers use for lack of anything better, except for those who, people who are really diving into sort of class rank issues will sometimes generate their own GPAs. And I think that's Celeste was referring to some researchers who have done that on projects already. If you, I'm sure she'd be happy to connect you, Celeste Alexander from UT Austin, if you'd like that information. So
I appreciate the flag on that. Yeah, I think GPA would be most useful to us for for earlier in their career before participating in the program for the matching purposes. And for that, we would probably just use other measures of academic achievement. But we appreciate the flag that we might need to get it through post-secondary data from an outcome perspective.
And then one other thing is, just because it's your first project, we'll ask you to go back in, and some of the titling for the data for the manuals is incorrect in your proposal. So you'll have CBM OOB-OOS data, and there's actually a CBM OOB and a CBM OOS, and you have M data tied with C data. And I think that's a pretty easy cleanup fix that, we can ask just that it be resubmitted so there's no confusion about the data that's being requested. It was clear to me what you wanted. It was just sometimes I think how those reports nest in the manual can be a little confusing. So I just wanted to make sure that we get that corrected.
Happy to get that squared away. Thanks for flagging.
Oh, you're welcome. And then ROTC, and the ROTC, I'm sorry, I had a question about how you'll identify those, but I think it was answered later that is in fact marked in the TEA data if a course is ROTC, correct?
Yes.
So you've got, okay, great. Any questions from anyone else? All right, do we have a motion regarding approval and remote access for UT Dallas 144? Everyone's getting quiet.
Yeah, this is Celeste. I motion for approval of the project with remote access.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Teresa, I second.
Thank you, Teresa. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I counted 4. Do we have, I think, let me try that again. Maybe I heard over. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, I got it there. Thank you. I just wanted to be sure. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you for joining us. Congratulations and good luck with your research. This was,
Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
First Army project we had. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, and now we're moving into our last project, and this is proposal 12. It's not our last agenda item. We have one more after this, but this is our last proposal, and this is UT Dallas 144 long-term outcomes. Oh, sorry, we got to move on.
Right, for some reason.
It doesn't want to go. Well, I can read it from the agenda. If you can't get it to advance, I'll go ahead and do that. So let me just.
Like my keyboard is not. Okay. There. Oops.
Of course, got lots of paperwork. I had a. Whoops. Here we go. And you had it up too. Okay. I was going to say I had a bit of a flood in my study during the recent winter storm, so I had to relocate. I don't have a lot of space where I am. This is UT Dallas 145, effective transfer opportunities. Do we have a researcher with us to present this today?
Hi, yes, this is Lois Miller.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for sticking around for me being the final proposal. But so I am I'm a graduate student in the economics department at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and this would be a proposal for my dissertation. And so the main question that I'm interested in is, what are the effects of students who transfer between post-secondary institutions, and particularly thinking about students who transfer to high-quality institutions from maybe a community college or from a lower quality four-year institution. And so I would get at this using a regression discontinuity design, which would basically compare students just above and just below. Some schools have GPA thresholds that they say, if you meet this GPA as a transfer student and you have a certain amount of credits, then you are guaranteed transfer admission. So UT Dallas has one of those where they guarantee transfer admission for students who meet a certain GPA threshold. I think it's 3.0 for them. And then Texas A&M at College Station has a little bit different of a policy. Rather than being a guarantee, they have, if you have at least a 2.5 GPA, then you can be considered for transfer. But all students with less than a 2.5 GPA are not even considered for transfer to Texas A&M. So these would be kind of my main two institutions that I would be interested in. And what I would basically want to do is compare students who are, you can think of them as being offered the guaranteed transfer, or in the case of Texas A&M, the opportunity to potentially transfer, and then look to see if they have different educational and labor market outcomes. So specifically, I would be interested in persistence, graduation rates, time to graduation, and then earnings and employment using the UI records. And so I did request some of the TEA data too, and that's basically for robustness checks on the exercise itself, because I want to make sure that these students who are on either side of the cutoff are really comparable to each other. And one way to do that is to look and see if they have similar background observable characteristics. So I would like to see, like, did they have similar high school test scores and similar race, that kind of thing, similar like free reduced price lunch status. And so I would be interested both in looking at the effect of being offered these transfer, and then also the effect of actually transferring. So there's more detail in the proposal about exactly how I get into that, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from advisory board members? The last chance today. Well, I'm of course going to have something on my very last proposal as my very last ERC meeting. A couple quick things. One is that you may not be aware of it. You can easily determine the community college student's GPA, or the student who's transferring from wherever their GPA, from the CBM-OOS data, which we start having in 2012. But the CBM-002 data that you also requested does have a way to generate a GPA. It is going to be slightly different because I believe that's a GPA for completed courses as opposed to being able to do one for successfully completed courses. So if you do use the one for the 002, make sure you understand that it's not going to be the same. There is a slight difference, and I can't remember exactly what. It's been a long time since I've needed to use that 002 for GPA data, but there is a GPA element in there. So just want to make sure you fully understand that if you're going to use it. And Melissa Humphreys could, I'm sure, assist if you needed it on that, or you could get in touch with me if it's in the next couple of months. And then you asked for pretty much everything that's out there in terms of data, and there are things that I didn't see any connection to for the project. Like you asked for facilities data from the coordinating board, which is data about rooms and buildings and that sort of thing. Can you talk about why you included those data?
To be honest, I think in reviewing, I was just looking over the data that I requested today, and it might have been a little bit too broad of a blanket. I don't think that I really need the facilities data because that doesn't really have much to do with student background characteristics. So if there's a way to edit it out, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. And the other thing is some of the continuing education data, and, I think you're looking at students who are, their intention is to transfer, and collecting data on continuing workforce education doesn't seem like it would I think you could make a loose connection there, or occupational skills awards. And you also have resident and fellows, and that's medical students. So I think there's definitely some data here that isn't needed. Certainly the medical student data and the facilities data, I think we should suggest removal of that. You also go back a long way to 1990, and I know you were 91, I think, as far back as things go, or 92 on some things. I know you were making the case for wanting to look over time. Do you really, can you talk a little bit more about what your window is for the actual students you're going to be looking at for transfer? Because it feels like we could probably narrow this a little bit for you.
Sure. So I think part of the problem when I was writing up the request is that I was not totally sure. I hadn't gotten a lot of responses from, I've contacted some of these institutions in Texas about how long these GPA thresholds have been in existence. And so, ideally, I would like to go back to whenever this policy first came about. But I guess if there are some years for which I wouldn't be able to look at outcomes or wouldn't be able to have the necessary data to compare it, or if the policy doesn't exist, then I wouldn't necessarily need it that far back. I kind of just wanted to make sure that if I could cover all the years that the policy was in place, that I would get a hold of it. I haven't heard back from UT Dallas yet. It looks to me like that policy didn't come into place until around 2014. So for that one, I certainly wouldn't need it that far back. But I haven't confirmed that with them. And for Texas A&M, I think I can just double check here. I think that they said it was somewhere around 2000. So I can probably trim that too.
So if it was 2000 onward, and again, given that you're going to have to use the GPA data from the 002, and actually, I'm not sure when we started adding that. If it was 2000, and then I'm frankly going to suggest you go past 2018, and I know that's where you intend to stop, but sometimes people will be asked to go back and look into the data, or I think it said straight out 2018, and I just want to make sure you have what you need. Okay. I'm going to look here. So I would suggest that you go to 2019 just to be sure, especially you don't want to get in there and say, gee, I wish I'd asked for the most recent years that are in here. In fact, we've got 2020 going in now. Okay. If you don't have so would, removing those data we talked about that really have no relationship, and then Julie, 2000 to 2020, would that be, I'm sorry, go ahead, Celeste.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt too much, but it was addition to what you're saying is I wasn't clear how elementary school data would be used in your models if you're going that far back on these cohorts.
Yeah, I don't think that I need the elementary school. I think it would be more the high school characteristics. Maybe I was a little unclear about how to separate those two in the request.
Well, it's more that it's the TEA data. It's having all that TEA data that you may not actually need.
Sure. So I think I would only need the TE data from the high school, not from the elementary school. And with regard to the years, I think going to 2020 sounds like a good idea too.
Why don't I make the suggestion, so we don't hold people up for too long in terms of sorting this out? Why don't I make the suggestion that we could go ahead and consider a motion for approval if a committee member advisory board member wants to make that, but it would be contingent on you getting approval from me and Linda Roska at TEA, who is, sort of the person responsible for or understands the TEA data the best, that we would review. You could submit a new outline of the data that you would like to request, and that would fit around the project based on this conversation. And then if the advisory board gives us permission to go ahead and approve you to go forward, once we have reviewed that and said it meets your needs for the project. It feels like that might be a faster way to do this than to try to sort it all out today in terms of exactly what you need. Does that sound okay from Dallas, and for you, Lois, that'll work?
Sure, that's fine for me, yeah.
again, if folks approve it. Yeah, this is just pretty much everything, and I think that's going to make it harder for you to have all that noise and better for you to have the files that are going to tie into your project. Okay, good. And then I think that's all I had was just a little confusion about that. It's an interesting project, and I think there's a lot of interest in transfer in Texas right now, and so I think it's certainly a very, very timely one. Okay, any other comments or questions, Celeste? Does that answer your concern if we go ahead and approach it that way?
Yes, I think that's perfect.
Okay. And if I hear no other comments, do we have a motion that would be for approval of remote access and the project contingent on my approval and Linda Roska's approval of a revised data request template, a revised page? I'm looking for the revised pages 8 and 9 for the project.
Well, I can approve it, given that we're gonna wait for Linda and Julie's approval on page 8 and 9, and for remote access, and for the project approval.
So that's a motion. Thank you. So we have a motion from Celeste. Do we have a second for approval of the project and remote access once Linda Roska and I have approved the revised data request on page 8 and 9? Do we have a second?
This is Kathy. I second.
Great. So you got off easy on that, Kathy. Celeste had the hard work. Okay. So we have a motion. We have a second. Do we all in favor? Please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, then the ayes carry it. This is approved. Please, I'll be happy to work with you, Lois, and I'm sure Greg Branch will, on making sure we get the data request sorted out and set for you. All right, thanks. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Your project.
You're
welcome.
I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Now we're moving to the last agenda item. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are not actually going to be considering approval of proposed guidelines. As I noted, we had a little change in thinking about this. So let me just advise the board on where we are now in terms of this. And I do think we'll have one issue we will have to consider. So this advisory board voted to establish a subcommittee to discuss guidelines for commissioner-directed projects, which are those projects which aren't required to come to the advisory board. And the board felt like, this really should be up to the state agencies to have this discussion in the subcommittee. So we met as a subcommittee, Linda Roska, Adam Leonard, and I, and Angie also joined us. And we just invited her to the meeting. But we laid out what we thought would be some good guidelines, and then I moved it forward to folks at my agency, including legal counsel, and the advice from legal counsel, and looking at the ERC rules and statute related to commissioner-directed projects, which of course are not required to go to the advisory board except for remote access. The advice was that we consider developing an interagency contract across the three agencies to lay out requirements that we might have in terms of how commissioner-directed projects might be handled. And I spoke with I spoke with Linda Roska and Greg Branch regarding this approach, and both thought that would be an effective way to do this. And so that determination was made that rather than bring guidelines to this body to approve, that we would develop an interagency contract across the three agencies to handle commissioner-directed projects. And of course, projects for remote access will still come to the advisory board. So I just wanted to fill people in on that, but I do think because at the last meeting we had a couple of projects where we set some parameters until such time as guidelines were ready. I thought my sense in talking to folks at the agencies is probably thinking about targeting September for having these contracts set up. So we thought it would be appropriate to just see if the advisory board would like to consider a motion to continue on with those parameters that we set up for a few of the commissioner-directed projects in terms of access to the ERC data until such time as those guidelines until such time as those interagency contracts are complete. So is that something that would be acceptable? Just so it's clear that because we thought we would have something today, and this is a kind of a change in course, we wanted to make sure that those kind of guardrails, parameters that had been set that the advisory board is okay with them continuing until this work is done.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I was just kind of curious. Some of them actually have end dates, and I didn't know if this affected, like if they couldn't work on it for a while until we get these guidelines, or how it would work.
So I think in terms of the end dates, there are. I think there's one of the projects. It's the project can continue, and that was set up to continue from that time. And so this would be to continue through, I guess, until, the project did reach an end date, in which case I would think that the advisory board, it could be brought to the, from the agency to the ERC to, I feel like a consideration could be made if an end date comes during that period, and if these aren't complete. Perhaps for an extension until such time. That seems like a very straightforward thing. Perhaps we could consider that. I'm trying to think. That very good question, Celeste. To me, I think that would be a good way to approach it. To just understand that if a project has an end date and it was not fully open, that the folks working on that, the agency that proposed that project could certainly propose an extension until such a time as this work is complete, as the contracts are complete. That seems reasonable to me. I'm not sure that the advisory board would need to vote on that. I feel like the vote.
No, we haven't. In the past, if they've been extended, it went to the agency that had been the directive, and they sent out another letter saying that now it's been extended.
Yeah, and I think that would be appropriate, and I think it would, certainly there would be an understanding that there was a delay in terms of this work. So I think that would be an appropriate way to move forward if that's the case. And then the agency, then the agencies involved can make a determination there. But because there was remote access involved, really this advisory board was involved in the remote access request for one of these projects, where, as I said, it was approved to move forward, but there were some parameters put around the project, so it just seemed appropriate to continue those until such a time as this work is done, because they were put there with an understanding that there's that some type of guidance or additional work was needed before the full project moved forward. All right. So are others okay with that in terms of those commissioner-directed projects? I want to say there were two that had, and mostly it was sort of they were proposing to expand the work as opposed to just continue what they'd already been doing, and the guide rails were to, appropriate to continue remotely that work that had already been happening, but not to move into the expansion. And also, I think there was additional agency review for one of them in terms of the output. So, any other comments? Thank you, Celeste. Or questions? If not, is someone willing to make a motion along those lines? I feel like we need to close that loop since we thought we were going to be at a point today and we're not. Make a motion that what was determined in December will continue until such a time as those interagency contracts are in place.
I'll attempt it. So the directives that are currently ongoing that have had in December had guidelines put on them will also continue while we're working on the interagency contract MOUs for the directives.
Okay, so that's a motion that
That's a motion.
Will continue. Great. Do we have a second?
Second, Gary.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Celeste. You did a nice job with that. Okay. Well, is there any? I think we've covered our full agenda. Again, thank you all so much for being with me on this journey for the last several years. I particularly want to thank Gary and thanks Sarah and Teresa. I know it really is, it's a lot of time and a lot of effort to read the proposals, and having outside researchers, experts as part of this group is really important. So thank you to you three very much for your efforts as part of this committee. It's really been valuable having you with us. And also thank you to the ERC directors, Celeste and Kathy and Greg. Much appreciated all the work that we've done together as part of this board, as well as the work that you've done with the ERCs that's beyond the scope of the advisory board. And of course, thank you to our state agency representatives, to Linda Roska. Adam's not here, but to Adam and Angie, thanks for sitting in today. You had some great questions. So much appreciated. And thank you to Melissa for jumping in for the next meeting. So Linda Hargrove can continue to be your contact person, and you'll be seeing Melissa next time in June. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
You don't want to go? This is Celeste, and we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Yes, we will.
Is that a second?
I second both of those things, the motion to adjourn and that we'll miss Julie.
And one additional thing, and that is I retire from the University of Houston at the beginning of the summer. I will attend the June meeting, but that's going to be the end of my participation on the committee.
Well, Gary, thank you so much. Thank you, Gary, so much for letting us know, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
I think you were the professor to my former boss, David Gardner, many years ago.
Yes.
So I know your career has extended much longer than mine in terms of education. So thank you so much for all you've done for the students of Texas. So much appreciated, and for this board. And thanks for letting us know so that we can.
Thank you. Yes.
In terms of
a replacement
moving past that, we can make sure we have a replacement. Yeah, for especially for that university voice, since that we have our 2 K-12 representatives. So great. Well, thanks for letting us know. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very exciting. Anyone
Congratulations to you too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No other important announcements? Then I'll thank you all for being with us, and the meeting is adjourned. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.